Chapter 3 of Mango Delight. In the last chapter at the end, Mango found out that her best friend Brooklyn got a phone. Chapter 3 is entitled For Never. This is part 1 of chapter 3. Walking to school, I felt as though I was having an out-of-body experience, floating way up high in the sky and observing myself back down on Earth, acting like the biggest phony in the history of phonydom. Brooke was skipping and twirling and squealing on and on about her new phone, and I skipped and squealed and twirled right along with her. Anyone watching would have thought I'd been given a phone too. Yes, I could be a pretty convincing fake when I put my mind to it. Brooke was breathless as she went on and on about how she managed to get a phone. Oh, MGZ, I was so surprised when my mother finally agreed with me that I should have a phone too. I told her all about Haley Joanne and her phone apps that help her run and warm up and cool down and all, and how I came in third in the race behind you and Haley Joanne. That really showed my mother how unfair it is that I don't have the same advantages you two have. I don't have any advantages. Oh, you know what I mean. You really do. Your mom was a track star, so it's in your blood. And she must give you running tips and everything, right? Actually, she doesn't like talking about running much since... Anyway, Brooke broke in without letting me finish my thought. My mother had a talk with my father, and he finally agreed that I needed a phone if I'm going to keep up with everyone else. It's only fair, right? I said, right, even though I didn't mean it, and we both jumped up and down and twirled around together. All of a sudden, I heard that awful tweet, tweety, tweet sound. I turned around, thinking Hateful Joe was right behind us, but she wasn't there. I looked to the left, to the right, up ahead. I even looked up above in the trees, but no Hateful Joe. So when Brooke held up her phone and read a text message from our super enemy, I felt like I was being electrocuted, or at least what I imagined electrocution would feel like. Oh, MGZ, Haley Joanne wants me to hurry so I can show the rest of the cell bells my phone before classes start. Hateful Joe? Since when are you and... Brooklyn cut me off mid-sentence again. I forgot to tell you. Before my father drove me to the mall last night, we stopped by the restaurant to, make sure everything was running smoothly. I waved to your dad in the kitchen. Didn't he mention it? I opened my mouth to answer the question, but Brooke bulldozed ahead. Anyway, guess who was at a table finishing her dessert? Haley Joanne. FYI, just to recap yesterday morning so you don't make the same mistake again, she despises being called Haley Joe. She thinks it sounds immature like a tomboy, which she certainly is not. So, anyway, her father and my father got to talking, and my father told her father that we were going phone shopping. Haley Joanne offered to go with us and help me pick out a really cool phone, and, well, the rest is sistery. Sistery? Really? Seriously, Mango, Haley Joanne is a major coolsicle once you get to know her. She helped me pick out this bedazzled leopard print phone case, which looks so fabulous next to her bedazzled zebra stripe case. Then she showed me how all the gadgets on my phone worked, and she helped me download the crispiest apps. The running apps, chat apps, emoji apps, fashion apps, selfie filter apps, and music apps too. We traded phone numbers and texted each other all the way home while my father was dropping her off. In the same car? You texted each other in the same car? Brooklyn gave her lips a rest, stopped walking, flipped her hair back, and looked at me with her eyes wide and head cocked to the side. Yeah, duh. You'll understand when you get a phone too. Now come on, the cell bells are waiting for us. That two-letter word, us, was just the life preserver I needed. For a moment, I thought I had lost my best friend, that she had completely gone over to the dark side with the rest of the iPhonies. But she remembered to include me. We were still us. I was beginning to become a little bit cheerier. If Hateful Joe, Haley Joanne was inviting Brooklyn into her crew, then she'd have to invite me too, phone or no phone. Brooke and I were besties forever. Unfortunately, it only took me 3 periods to realize forever didn't last as long as it used to. Our first class of the day was language arts. It was one of my favorites because our teacher, Bob Levy, was so funny. He was a huge guy, really tall and wide, with a shock of red hair that stood up on top of his head like a cockatoo. Bob was always doing strange characters and making weird faces and beatbox sound effects. He was a human cartoon, so it was hard not to pay attention in his class. Bob also insisted we call him Bob, which was extra crispy. It made us all feel like adults. Bob made the other teachers seem like dinosaurs. Bob thought he was destined to be a playwright on Broadway. He was only teaching for a few years while he was in his mid-20s. Bob and Mr. Ramsey, our music teacher, collaborated on the yearly school musicals. The two of them are total opposites. Mr. Ramsey was a small man. The biggest thing about him were his huge afro and the goggle-like eyeglasses he wore. Bob was always joking and making the room laugh, as opposed to Mr. Ramsey, who was a little tightly wound, nervous, and formal. We actually saw him jump at the sight of his own shadow once in the schoolyard. Still, word around the lockers was that the two of them worked magic together when it came to writing the annual musicals for the school. This morning, at the beginning of English class, Bob announced that on Thursday they would be holding auditions for Yo, Romeo, the Levy and Ramsey musical retelling of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. I never read that play, but I knew it was a tragedy about young lovers who died in the end. Brooke leaned over and said, "You should audition." I snorted, "Yeah, right." As if I would ever be able to sing in front of the entire student body, or anybody for that matter. I cringed at the memory of the talent show held just before Christmas vacation. The kids in the audience were brutal. They booed a boy to silence when he sang Silent Night off key. They laughed at the girl who did a stiff interpretive dance. She was about as flexible as a number 2 pencil. And worst of all, the poor soul who did a crummy magic act got hit square in the forehead with a chocolate pudding cup. He actually licked the pudding off his fingers after wiping his face. There was no way I was going to open myself up to that kind of ridicule. Besides, the drama nerds, that's what we call the kids who did any kind of theater stuff, they rehearsed after school when they were preparing to put on a show. And I already had got track practice after school 4 times a week, so it just wouldn't work out. I was becoming a little paranoid because Brooke had been so distant that morning in homeroom and in language arts. Her suggestion was the first time she had spoken to me since the bell rang. Was she trying to get me to audition so I'd drop out of GOT? Why would she do that? Just because I beat her in one measly race? I was no threat to her on the track. If I could turn back time, I would sing a slow Beyonce song in my head and come in last place in that dumb race. That way my bestie wouldn't be freezing me out, she wouldn't have had an excuse to get a new phone, and we'd be cracking jokes about Hateful Joe on the way to school this morning, and everything would have been normal. Brooklyn and I didn't have all the same classes. After language art, we went to math together, but Brooke went to study hall and I went to an advanced reading class with the kids who read above their grades after that. Brooke didn't mind because she didn't like to read books. She was way better than me in math, so it didn't bother her that I was in a higher level reading group. I had my reading class just before lunch, and Brooke always waited for me by our lockers so we could walk to the lunchroom together. Today, she wasn't at the lockers. At first, I thought she was late or had to go to the bathroom or something. I've been waiting almost 10 minutes when the principal, Ms. Lipschultz, came down the hall on one of her patrols and squinted at me. "Mango, shouldn't you be in the cafeteria now?" My mouth suddenly went all sandpapery. Ms. Lipschultz had the coldest gray eyes on the planet. Even if she were being nice, her eyes were like hailstones and they'd freeze you on the spot, whether she meant to or not. I pried my tongue from the roof of my mouth and said, "I'm just waiting for Brooke, Miss Lipschultz." "I saw her in the cafeteria. She's already seated. Hurry up before lunch period is over." I said, "Yes, ma'am," the way Dada had trained me, and headed to the cafeteria. I felt heat rising on the back of my neck. Why had Brooke left me standing there? Was it because of that stupid phone? If she thought having a phone suddenly made her better than me, then, well, she had another think coming. That's the end of part 1 of chapter 3. Bye.